the goodness of God and the severity of God, and finally God's ability. Let me read to you verses 23 and 24. These concern the Jews throughout the New Testament age. And they also, the Jews, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. God is able. For if thou, Gentiles, wert cut out of the olive tree which is wild by nature, and wert grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? God is able, this passage says, to save the Jews, to graft them into the olive tree in their generations again. God is able to graft them in. And when it says God is able, we think first of all of his omnipotence. All God has to do is speak a word, and the world pops into being. All God has to do is to speak another word, and the world which he has created, and the entire universe, not only keeps going, but runs according to his predetermined plan. Just a word. God speaks a word, and a virgin conceives the Son of God. God speaks a word through Ezekiel in chapter 37, and dry bones live. Just a word. So God is able to do it in terms of his power. Of course he is. God is able to do it means too that Jews being saved throughout the New Testament is not contrary to the Scriptures. See, God is able to send a worldwide flood, but God will not send a worldwide flood. And God will not send a worldwide flood because he has told us that he will not send a worldwide flood. So God, in a sense, is not able to do something which he has said he won't do because he keeps his word. Abstractly, he has the power to do it, but he won't do it if his word says he won't do it. God is able to do it means, one, he has the power to do it. Two, he has the power to do it not merely, but we know that it wasn't contrary to anything he said in the Scriptures. And then three, God is able to graft back in the Jews because it is not against God's decree. And verse 5 tells us that God's decree means that he always had and always has some Jews to be saved. Even so then, at this present time also, there is a remnant according to the election of grace. God is able to graft them in. And the last 2,000 years record many instances of Jews being grafted in and saved again. And verses 23 and 24 make the point that in one sense, it is easier for God to save Jews than Gentiles. Easier for God to save Jews than Gentiles. And here we hasten to add, it's not that Jews are less depraved than Gentiles, because all are totally depraved. 100% depravity for Jews, 100% depravity for Gentiles because of total depravity. And Paul says in Romans 3, we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under the law, and there's none that doeth good, there's none righteous, there's none that seeks after God, etc., etc. There is no seed of faith or no natural proclivity in a Jew that's not in a Gentile. No, all are totally depraved. The easier idea comes from this. We Gentiles were often pagandom, if there is such a thing, and were brought in. But the Jews, when they're saved, are brought back to their own olive tree. In their generations, according to their outward profession, they've always believed in one God. Most of the people you read about in the Bible, this is true even for the New Testament as well as the Old Testament, most of the people you read about in the Bible were Jews. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Samuel, David, Solomon, the apostles. The Jewish nation as a whole has always expected a Messiah. Jesus was a Jew. Then he rose up on high and became the Catholic or universal Christ. They have the Old Testament scriptures. And so for God to save a Jew, it's especially this, that he comes home. He comes home. He's joined to his ancestors. He now understands the Old Testament for the first time. He comes to know Jesus Christ promised in the Old Testament. And then they're grafted in. Grafted in not only individually but in their generations. There's one person here this morning who is 50% Jew. There's another who's 25% Jew, grafted in their generations. Maybe some of you, if you go far back, to tell me that you know of someone of Jewish blood in your tree. And maybe if we had a long enough family tree, we could say it about a number of us. But whether that's true or not, the thing about salvation is faith in Jesus Christ. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. Behold, beloved, and tremble, and then behold and be grateful. Amen.